I'm Charlie Bride of Gold Derby, and today I am speaking with musician, Academy Award winner, Grammy Award winner. Are there any awards in high school that you may have won that I'm leaving out there? Um, uh,
Definitely not.
Jon Batiste, who's the subject of the new Netflix documentary American Symphony. First question I had is, did you and Suleika have any apprehensions about having cameras following you around? And if so, how did Matthew Heineman, the director, alleviate those concerns?
Well, first part of the question, yes, very many concerns. It was a decision we continually had to reassess every other week. We were in conversation throughout the process with Matt, and that's pretty much how he gained our trust. And I'd worked with Matt in the past on his film, The First Wave, and I knew him a little bit, but not to the degree of being with him basically 14 hours on average a day for over 7 months. It was 1,500 hours of footage to make this film. So you can imagine how much you start to really know a person from just working on one project to being in a position where now you're embedded. He's embedded in our family.
Uh, so the film centers around. There's so many things that are going on with your life in the film, but the it seems like the one of the centers of it is you composing this symphony that you debut at Carnegie Hall. And I'm curious, how did the opportunity to write your own symphony come about?
I've really been so lucky with just being in the right place at the right time and being prepared. I've been working on writing something like this for 6 years, and the audacity to think that you could recreate the symphony in the symphonic context and bring in musicians who are classical players, musicians who are modular synthesizer operators and engineers, musicians who play indigenous archaic folk instruments who never played in a concert hall and don't read music, and you have them on stage with the percussionists or the musicians who are from jazz or classical backgrounds or marching band traditions. We had to invent new notation and new ways of communication in order to balance all of the sounds and frequencies. You don't want the drum set to not blend with the timpani or the synthesizers to overtake the flute section. There's all these different things that are at play. So I was afraid to approach putting it together. When the idea first landed in my head, I said, I got to build a new symphony, and I don't. That's an audacious goal. And then that next week or so, I got a call from Carnegie Hall, and they were saying, "We'd love to have you do a residency, and you'll have a year to prepare what you want to perform. Do you have any ideas of stuff that you might want to perform at Carnegie Hall?" And I said, "Well, I think I might have something that I've been toying with for a few years. It's called American Symphony. Do y'all want to collaborate on that?" So that's how it happened. I was sitting with the idea, and then, as fate would have it, the incredible opportunity arose, and it felt like, okay, I got to do it now. This is the time to build this thing.
Uh, it's so amazing to watch that opening night, especially because there's a little hitch in the opening concert, and I couldn't even. And I was even wondering to myself, is this purposeful, or is this an honest to God, like something went wrong here? Just what was that night like, and to also have Suleika in the audience for that as well. What was that like?
Well, it's incredible to have this experience together and then have it chronicled on film. And it's even when you watch the last scene, it's hard to put into words what that meant for our family to have her there. I tried to capture it in the song when I wrote. It never went away. There was so much that was coming from. That was the last thing that I was able to write for the film, and I was trying to encapsulate what you just asked me. It's like it's an eternal and divine stream of consciousness, a super consciousness that we're all tapped into. And that's where love comes from. That's where creativity comes from. That's where all of our inspirations and ideas come from. I just imagine this stream that we can dip into, and it's from the beginning, and it will be here forever. It will never go away. And our deepest feelings and emotions, when those rise up to the surface, that's kind of like us submerged in that stream. And it felt like that whole evening and that whole era after she got out of the hospital and after the symphony was able to come to life, especially after we got past the power outage moment, felt like we were all in this, we were submerged in this moment of oneness. And it's just it's an impossible feeling to describe, but it's an incredible thing to have come through it and to now have her feeling better than ever, and for this piece to now be out in the world. I can't wait to release the symphony recording so you can hear it in its entirety. It's the piece is, I mean, it's the score of the film, so you get to hear it in the context of the film. But this piece is just, I'm so proud of the musicians, and I'm proud of the team that was able to mount this thing with me.
You talked about Suleika's health, and it's so emotional seeing her go through her health, her journey with her leukemia, returning in this movie. How has her health been? How has her health been recently?
It's been the best case scenario. It's something that she wasn't able to do. She's here with me in New Orleans now, and she wasn't able to travel. She was not sure she was even ever going to be able to travel again. So that's a big deal. And to have the ability to be together in New Orleans and to have ideas of things that we want to do in the future and to plan for that, it's very, very, very promising, and a wonderful ending to a film that when we were making it, we didn't know if it was going to be a happy ending. We didn't know what the ending of this film was going to be when we embarked upon filming.
We've been talking about, the last, I mean, so many years have been completely crazy for you, I imagine, but it seems like the last 5 years specifically have been like on another level, when you combine, your professional stuff, like with, collaborating with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, winning an Oscar, winning Grammys, and debuting the symphony, but also your personal thing with everything that happened with Suleika's health, and also I'm guessing also with addressing, which you show in the movie, addressing your mental health as well. Of all the things that have happened for you over the last 5 years, I'm curious as to what stands out as being the most surreal moment for you.
Wow. The most surreal moment. It's so many. You're right. It feels like this just flaming toboggan ride in the best ways. The last 5 years, but I think that the most surreal thing, honestly, is when we were watching the film at Telluride, because the film sort of chronicles the journey, the journey of the last 7 months. It has all of these things that culminate in that period, or not too shortly before the period of filming, and me being on television for 7 years with my friend Steven and the band, and then leaving and then doing all of these incredible projects and having all this recognition and getting to this point where, 11 Grammy nominations, and I mean, it's beyond imagination. 7 across 7 categories. And my same week we find out my wife has leukemia. It's just like, but then to come through all of it and to be at Telluride and watching a film about it with the mountains behind us, and you get clips of the all of these things I'm talking about, and you get into, and I'm hearing myself talking. Most of the time I'm talking in the film, it's a hot lav mic that's on, and it's me in conversation. You don't hear the other person. It's me talking to Matt processing what happened in our day, and I'm laying in bed or I'm talking to my therapist, and the mic is on. So it's like having it chronicled like this and watching it back with 2,000 other people. That, do you know what I mean? It's like though every moment in and of itself was already insanely out of this world, right? But then to have most of them in a film that now the world can watch, and to be watching it with other people, it's hard to describe what that moment was like.
I understand. I understand. Like, you're letting you're watching people being let into your world, essentially.
Right. I never, ever, ever, ever thought we would do anything like this. I'm not. I always vowed I would never do reality TV. I would, nothing against that, but we're Slike and I are very private. We're not people who would necessarily be inclined to do this, especially when, she's feeling her lowest and I'm in the most stressful period ever of my life. But if we were rooted in a bigger why, it just emerged in the conversations with the three of us, Matt, and our family. Just, it felt like it was important to be so raw and vulnerable, because people always get an illness narrative of, the hero's journey. You make it and you're better than ever on the other side, or the celebrity culture of you only see the highlights, and it feels like it's unintentionally saying to folks that we're exempt from the human condition, and that's far from the truth. Everybody's the same. There's no hierarchy of a person who doesn't suffer. So, and some of us suffer more, and it's important for those who it's perceived that you don't suffer to show that. And it helps for all of us to know we're not alone out here. So that was surreal to see all of that kind of come together. It was a very, very, because I had no idea when we were making the movie what it was going to be, what the story was going to, like, I was just forward momentum. Let's just make it through this, make it through this, make it through this.
You actually just briefly touched on this, and I'm curious as to how did your relationship with Stephen Colbert originate?
Oh my gosh, he's the greatest. I met him when he was doing a show called The Colbert Report, and I was a guest on his show. It was the first time he had ever heard of me. His booker booked me, who is a great friend of ours, and also that whole team went on to work. So we all worked together on the show for 7 years. But at the time, I didn't know anybody there. We hadn't met until the time that we got on stage together, and we sat there and had an incredible interview back and forth that ended with a performative. It was a performative conversational dynamic that we both felt like, I could be on stage with this guy. I could do something with him. And then we performed with the band Stay Human and did a Love Riot, which is this thing I've been doing for many years, which is taking the audience out of the venue and processing them like a New Orleans processional parade, and performing, creating community wherever we go. So we did that in the middle of New York City and danced in the street together. And after that, we exchanged information. He said, you know what, let's be in touch, not knowing that he was taking over for Letterman at the time. This was a great energy. I don't know how to describe that. It's just a rapport. and from there, I was on the Colbert Report for their final show. And from there, it was a relationship that we had developed, and it was organic. He probably knew already, but he got the call to take over for Letterman, and he called me and said, to be honest, I had a situation that fell through for a very famous person to be my band leader, and I was so happy. And I said, why is that? And he goes, because when I met you, I immediately knew that this is the person who I want to be on stage with. And it was so kismet, because after that first Colbert Report performance and conversation, I was getting texts from everybody and people out of woodwork, people I hadn't heard from in years, like 30 or 40 messages saying, "Oh, you should be, you and him should be you should be the band on his new show. You should." And I was apprehensive to calling him about it. So then the day before I was gonna call him, my band even convinced me, like, we should call your friend Steve, call. So I was gonna call him and he called me first. So, and he told me the same thing was happening in his life. So it was just like this, it was a beautiful, organic convergence of us working together for 7 years.
Just one last question I had, and this is about, we are an awards site, and you 2 years ago you won the Grammy for Album of the Year for We Are, and it's also shown in the documentary. It was such an amazing moment, I'm sure, for you. It almost seems like it didn't really hit you until you were on stage, like this is actually happening. And I was just curious what it was like winning that, and what that night was like for you.
Well, it was such a special night. I mean, the moment I was on stage, one of the most surreal moments for me was realizing that 10 years prior to that, Lenny Kravitz came to a basement church in Harlem where I was doing performances on Wednesday nights. And it were these incredible small scale performances that a Lenny Kravitz would never show up to. Like, it's not the kind of thing you would have Lenny Kravitz show up to. So he came and we jammed out and we had an incredible New York night. And I would do these every week, and he started spreading the word, and all kinds of folks would start to come, and some of them who were in that room that night. But when Lenny gave me the trophy for Album of the Year, it was just such the journey from the speakeasy, the makeshift speakeasy in the basement of a church in Harlem on a Wednesday night, to Album of the Year on stage at the Grammys. And we looked at each other. I don't know if you could see it in the camera, but it was just like, he said, "Wow." Do you know what I mean? It's not a normal trajectory. So I think it was a lot of stuff like that. But this year I'm even more excited for just the simple fact that I'll get to go to the Grammys with my wife this time. And I was so preoccupied in many ways, trying to stay present, just because it was hard to really be away from the hospital when, you see in the film, she was watching it from the couch. And now we get to go together, and it's so cool. The Song of the Year, you're an awards site, you'll appreciate this. Song of the Year was inspired by and began its inception in the hospital room. And now we're going to be at the Grammys together celebrating that music that was inspired by a moment that, I basically wrote the song for her. So Butterflies, now it's it's all surreal. I'm just creating, and I'm just, I don't think about it. That's why it never gets old for me. It's like it hits me like a ton of bricks every time. I don't know how to make it old hat.
Well, Jon, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over this season. We also wish Suleika all the best as well. We're so happy that she's doing well. And to all of our viewers, please like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to keep going to Gold Derby to make your awards predictions this season. Thanks so much.
Later on.